And here we go. We are off to round number 3 at Thunder Valley in Colorado. It feels like this could be a key turning point in the championship. We're headed up to over 6,000 feet in altitude, which is where Eli Tomac lives and trains. There's a lot to talk about, and that's exactly what we're going to do. This is our race day update show where we go over the injury updates, rider statistics, the points, the track conditions, the weather, the schedule, and all of the rider storylines, pretty much everything you would need to know before the gate drops. Alright, so the first thing we're going to get into is our injury updates. Unfortunately, we did see Jeremy Martin crash out, and it looked like he was starting to get the momentum going. He did have some pretty good speed for his first race back at Paula, but he just couldn't get the starts, and he was off to a better start. So the last thing you would want to see is him crashing out like that. Personally, I was really excited to see what he could do. This was supposed to be his last race on his contract. He did confirm last week in press day that he only signed a 3-race deal. However, he will not be returning this weekend. It sounds like he's going to get all healed up, get 100%, make a return at round number 7 in Millville, which is not only his home race, but literally his home. It's where he grew up. His parents own the track, and it sounds like that's essentially going to be his going away party. So while I really hate to see that he crashed out, it's nice to see him still planning to go out on his own terms in Millville. Originally, he was planning to do that on a 450, but it sounds like he's going to stay with Star Yamaha and race in the 250 class. As far as his Star Racing Yamaha teammate Nate Thrasher, he did return to racing last weekend after getting pretty banged up in Paula, but you could tell he was definitely sore. He only scored points in one moto, still got 23rd in moto number 2, so he was still pretty solid, but definitely off the pace at the same time. I would expect he'll be more towards the top 15 this weekend with a little bit more time to heal up. He does have some pretty gnarly contusions. As far as Max Anstey, he's out for the majority or maybe all of motocross, trying to recover from that leg fracture that he got in Supercross. Then Daxton Bennick did say he's going to miss the first couple of rounds, still trying to recover from those concussions. If you take that literally, it has been a couple of rounds now, but he's not on the entry list, and I don't expect him to be racing this weekend either. Pierce Brown is back on the bike after that gnarly back injury, and it sounds like Cole Davies is getting his legs back moving. Not sure if he's back on the bike yet or not, doesn't sound like it, but if not, it sounds like he is getting relatively close. Hard to say exactly when he'll return to racing, but if I had to speculate, I would say he might return around round 7 or 8. So that is 6 Star Yamaha guys that we just talked about. That only leaves Hayden Deegan and Michael Moseman as the healthy riders on the team, and even Michael Moseman crashed in moto number 2 last weekend. Moving on to some better news, Jalik Swoll has been back on the bike for a while. He's not going to be returning from that Achilles injury this weekend, but it sounds like he's going to be returning to the series at High Point next weekend. Then we have another rider, Evan Ferry, who is also recovering from an Achilles injury. He is also not returning this weekend. He should be back for Redbud. Austin Faulkner looked a lot better last weekend than he did at Paula. He went down multiple times, had to get stitches, but he bounced back with 2 top 15 moto finishes, which might not sound too impressive, but compared to what he did at Fox Raceway, that was a major improvement. Look for him to continue building momentum this weekend. Cameron McAdoo is recovering nicely from that ACL reconstruction. He's been cycling like crazy, so it looks like he's trying to come back for Pro Motocross. No exact timetable yet on his return. Jet Reynolds is looking to return at Southwick from his broken leg. Styles Robertson did briefly return to racing, but really struggled, and it looks like his wrist is completely unstable. Not sure exactly if he did get surgery yet. That would be his 8th wrist surgery if he did. Either way, he's not racing this weekend. Gavin Towers bounced back from that foot injury last weekend. He didn't score any points. He went 23-25 on the day, but he looked pretty solid, so look for him to be lining back up this weekend as well. Nick Romano is pretty banged up. He's racing with a torn knee, and then he also dislocated his shoulder at round number 1 of Motocross. He did not race last weekend at Hangtown. He is on the entry list this weekend, but I would not be surprised if he doesn't race this weekend either. Carson Mumford is back on the bike and doing motos after that ankle injury. No exact timeline for his return. He's not going to be racing this weekend, but I'm excited to see him when he does come back. Also, Seth Hamaker will not be competing this weekend after sustaining an injury back at Hangtown. It's not quite clear exactly what the injury might be. We saw him come out and do pretty good in moto number 1, and then he DNF'd moto number 2, and then they pretty much at the last minute announced that he's not going to be competing this weekend. As far as the 450 class, we did see Grant Harlan go down. He had a pretty good result in moto number 1. He also did really good at Fox Raceway. Unfortunately, in moto number 2, he went down. He did suffer some broken ribs. He will not be racing this weekend. Sounds like he's probably going to sit out the following weekend, and then maybe try to come back for Southwick. As far as Chase Sexton goes, Lewis Phillips did report that Ian Harrison told him that he expects Chase to return for Southwick, which would mean Chase is going to miss this round and the next round. However, Chase Sexton did directly respond to that, saying that that's incorrect. So there's a couple of ways that you could take that. The way I took it is that the relationship with the team is starting to deteriorate. Chase does seem pretty professional to me, but he also does seem pretty unhappy right now. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him jump off of the team kind of in the middle of motocross, similar to what we saw Cooper Webb do when he was switching to Star Yamaha. Either way, doesn't look like he's racing this weekend or anytime soon. Not sure exactly what's going to happen here. Definitely something that's going to be interesting. As far as Justin Barcia, he's kind of in the same boat as Cameron McAdoo, cycling a lot, looking like he's getting ready to come back from a knee injury. Luckily, it's not an ACL reconstruction, but at the same time, we don't know exactly when he's going to be back. He is on the entry list, but as of the time of this recording, he has not confirmed that he'll be there. I don't think he's racing, but I do expect him to return in the next couple of rounds. Joey Savacci is still dealing with that broken finger, and it's pretty gnarly, but he still went out there and finished 11th overall with 10-11 moto scores last weekend. Look for him to continue to stacking points and get healthier as that finger starts to heal. Ken Roxon is in the thick of rehabbing his ankle after that surgery. It sounds like he might try to return for one or two of the last few motocross races, but as of right now, he can't even ride. Dylan Ferrandis is trying to recover from basically a chronic stress fracture in his leg. He kind of healed and then he re-fractured it in Supercross. Sounds like he might be returning for the last couple of rounds of motocross, and he's definitely going to try to come back for the playoffs. Moving on to our 250 point standings and storylines at the top, obviously we have Hayden Deegan. He's won every single moto. There's already starting to be some talks of can he get a perfect season? Nobody's done it before in the 250 class, so that would be pretty cool to see if he could get that done. He definitely has the speed to get it done, but he does seem to be a little bit inconsistent off of the starts. So I would be really curious to see what the next guy, Joe Shimoda, who is now 12 points down, he has given up the least amount of points that you could for somebody that's winning every moto because he has finished in second every single moto, and he's also started behind Hayden in every single moto. So I'm curious if he can get a whole shot and Hayden gets say a 10th place start. What does that race look like? I think that would have been really interesting last weekend because Joe Shimoda is really familiar with Hangtown. But nonetheless, he looks good pretty much everywhere so far, so I would love to see that at any point this season. Personally, I'm hoping that Joe could beat Hayden overall this weekend and make the points tighten up just a little bit, but I'm not sure that that will happen. Then, believe it or not, third in the championship right now, we have Julian Beaumer, and he is 21 points behind Joe Shimoda, so definitely well outside of striking distance for the championship. We are only 2 rounds in, and pretty much everybody has had at least a bad moto so far, other than the top 2 guys. Julian Beaumer is a rare exception here where he hasn't necessarily had a bad moto. He hasn't had any really good motos. He did have a pretty good moto last weekend with a 4th in moto number 2, but nothing that would really make you think he should be 3rd in the championship. Then right behind him, only 2 points back, we have Garrett Marchbanks, and I'm really excited to see this for Garrett. He is fighting for a ride next season. He was solid again last weekend with 7.5 moto scores, which got him a 5th overall. But the most encouraging thing with him is that it does seem that he has the speed to go with these guys. He does need a little bit better starts, but that's definitely something he struggles with at times because he's a relatively big guy on a 250. 5th in the championship, we have Levi Kitchen, and it was pretty concerning after round number 1. He didn't even score points in both motos, but he definitely bounced back strong at Hangtown, going 3-3, moving him all the way up here to 5th in the championship. He is still 13 points back behind Garrett Marchbanks though. Either way, it was really encouraging to see him have that speed again. Definitely not quite there with the top 2 guys. Sounds like he was definitely struggling with heat a bit. He was pretty disoriented after moto number 2. All of that being said, this was only his 2nd race back after that gnarly crash at Daytona, so I'm sure he'll continue to build and get better as the season goes on. Then in 6th, we have Tom Vial, and he's actually tied with Levi Kitchen. He just doesn't have as good of a finish, so technically Levi's ahead of him. I really hate to see Tom this far back in the points already because generally he's the guy who's pretty consistent and just scores solid points throughout the season. But when he DNF'd in moto number 1, that's definitely a huge setback for him. It's not like he's known to come out and set the world on fire and try to get back into this points battle. Thankfully, he did come back from moto number 2 and he did finish in 8th. So he scored some points, but I'm pretty concerned and confused as to why he didn't at least try to score some points in Moto number 1. Didn't seem like his bike was that beat up. He seemed relatively physically okay, and this was something that we saw him do when he won his first Supercross championship at essentially the first round when there was that huge pileup in Detroit. He just basically pulled right off the track and didn't even try to finish the race. Ultimately, he did end up winning the championship, but this seems to be a relatively consistent theme with Tom, where if he tips over or something like that, he's just going to pull off. And if you're hurt, that makes total sense. But if you're out there trying to fight for a championship and you're okay, I really don't understand that. Then in 7th, we have Michael Mosiman, and man, it would have been so cool to see him be able to stay up in that second moto and get that good finish. He looks way better than I expected coming into the season. We know he could be good at Hangtown since he grew up there, but nonetheless, he was absolutely killing it, and I love to see it. He's still well inside the top 10 in the championship right now. He seems like he's in a good place mentally. He's okay after the crash, so Michael Mosiman's another guy to keep your eye on. Then only 1 point behind him, we have Ty Masterpool. I was a little bit concerned about him after what we saw at Fox Raceway, but it was really great to see him come out and run really good. He almost got a podium in Moto number 1 in Hangtown, even though he was sick. Definitely didn't do so good that second moto. Understandable with the heat and the fact that he's not feeling well. Hopefully he was able to rebuild himself this weekend. I definitely think he could do really good. We've seen him do extremely good here at Thunder Valley. In 2023, we saw him switch over to the 450 class, and then he fell over in the first turn and still worked his way up through the field. We've seen him get a couple of good starts already this year. I would love to see him rip a hole shot and just try to run away with it. It sounds like he's not in good standing with the team, and it sounds like they might be looking to add another new rider on top of all the riders that they have next year. So his job is definitely on the line if it's not already gone. So hopefully he can have a good season. Then we have Chance Hymas, and he definitely had a rough weekend last weekend. He's only able to score points in Moto number 1. Did not race Moto number 2. Sounds like he was feeling under the weather. There were some concerns about his electrolyte levels and things like that. Whatever the case may be, it was a rough weekend for him. Now he's 9th in the championship, 1 point behind Ty Masterpool. 4 points behind him, we have Max Voland, and he quietly had a pretty good weekend last weekend, going 14-11 for 12th overall. It's awesome to see Max up here. He's by far the highest non-factory rider. Right behind him, we have Casey Cochran. He's only 2 points back. He did finish 11th overall last weekend with 12-12 moto scores, so slightly better than Max. But the thing worth noting here is that he got good starts and then faded back to those positions. It's also worth mentioning that that was only his second race back this season, so it's awesome to see that he does have some speed, maybe building some confidence. Either way, it's great to have him out there. Then tied with Cochran, we have Drew Adams, and he's been very hot and cold so far this season. He went 19-7 last weekend. The good news is it's his rookie season, and he does have the speed and the fitness at times. He just needs to be a little bit more consistent and try to stay off the ground. Then 14th in the championship, we have Mikel Harup. He's only 1 point behind Drew Adams, but what might shock you is that he got 7th overall last weekend. He definitely looked better than he did at Fox Raceway, and I think that's mostly due to getting good starts. That was something I highlighted in this show last weekend, is that he definitely struggled off of the starts. Looks like he fixed that. He did fade just a little bit during the motos, but not too bad. He was top 10 in both the motos, obviously finishing 7th overall. I don't see him contending for race wins or maybe even podiums at this point like some people were predicting, but he's definitely got some speed. It's awesome to have him in here as well. Then 2 points behind him, we have his teammate Jordan Smith, and he actually beat his teammate last weekend, finishing 6th overall. It's awesome to see Jordan Smith doing so good. I know that he was a race win contender in Supercross, but he's definitely struggled in Motocross before, so it's great to see that he's already right there near the top 5. I did predict coming into the season that Harup would be the top Triumph rider overall this season, and Jordan Smith is doing his best to prove me wrong there. He's only 2 points behind him. Definitely a cool little teammate battle we have going on here. Then 2 points behind him, we have the BarX Yamaha rider of Parker Ross, and he's somebody who I am personally really excited about. He did get 14th overall last weekend, but quietly he got a top 10 moto finish in Moto number 2. Granted, he did grow up near Hangtown. He's a local boy, has a lot of laps on that track, but nonetheless, he looks really good. We saw a lot of speed in Supercross. Looks like it's carrying over to the BarX Yamaha team and Motocross. I am really excited to see what the rest of his season looks like. 3 points behind Parker Ross, we have his teammate Dylan Schwartz, and he's actually bouncing back nicely from a very rough start to the season. He finished 9th overall last weekend, so definitely a really good showing. I highlighted him last weekend as somebody who could be finishing in the top 10, and sure enough, he came out and did just that, even though he was nowhere near the top 10 the weekend before. Then 4 points behind him, in 18th in the championship, we have Ryder DeFrancisco, and that actually matches his overall finish from last weekend as well. He did have one pretty good moto at Fox Raceway, but other than that, it's been a tough start to the year for him. He went 17-18 last weekend. Hopefully he can get back going. We know he has the speed. He's definitely a top 10 guy in the right circumstances, so I'm curious to see if he can bounce back this weekend. Then we have a pretty large gap back to 19th, which is Austin Faulkner. He's 12 points back, but he didn't score any points at Fox Raceway. He definitely bounced back a lot better this last weekend, going 15 and 14 in the motos, so that was really good to see. Hopefully he can just stay healthy. He has completed 1 or 2 complete motocross seasons before, so that's not something that's on his back like the supercross seasons are. But after the absolute crash fest that Fox Raceway was, I'm sure it was nice to just get 2 motos under his belt. Then rounding out your top 20, we have Alexander Fedorstov. He's another 5 points behind Austin. He didn't score any points in moto number 1 last weekend. Looks like he probably went down, but then he bounced back really well with a top 15 in moto number 2, and it sounds like he's somebody who has the speed. Looks like he's starting to get a little bit more confidence. He's going to need some better starts, but with a good start, don't be surprised to see him finish in the top 10. Now moving on to the 450 class, obviously at the top we have Jet Lawrence, but it was pretty interesting to see him get a so-called bad start last weekend. It was still a top 5 start, but for Jet Lawrence, that's definitely considered a bad start. Usually he's in the lead either across the whole shot or by the 3rd or 4th turn. According to Jet, he missed a shift. That's pretty crazy if you could still get that good of a start by missing a shift. Whatever caused it, hopefully we could see a little bit more of that, just so that way he can get some more bad starts and keep things more interesting. 16 points behind him, we have Aaron Plessinger. And man, I honestly thought that Aaron was probably going to take home the win. It really looked like he was capable. He led 30 minutes, definitely not all the way down to the last lap like it was the year before. But nonetheless, what a great ride out of Aaron Plessinger. He clearly beat Jet Lawrence straight up. So that was good to see. He did blow himself up, but even with that, he did get 2nd in the moto. Then only 1 point behind him is Eli Tomac, and man, what could have been. Eli Tomac definitely blew the start in moto number 2. It was great to see him go out there and get a moto win at least. It's pretty nice not to have to talk about the 450 perfect season anymore. I definitely think that the perfect overall season is still on the table. But this could definitely be a place where it comes to an end. Eli Tomac is from Cortez, Colorado. That is at similar elevation to where we're at in Morrison, Colorado. He lives here, he trains here, he's used to the altitude, he's going to have the bike dialed, he's done tons of laps here. All that set aside, he's still going to need a good start. But with a good start, I would not be surprised to see him get an overall win this weekend. Only 2 points behind Eli, we have Justin Cooper, and he's gotten a 2nd in a moto at both rounds so far. He definitely looks good at times. He looked better this weekend than the weekend before, so he's somebody who could definitely be dangerous with a nice hole shot as well. 3 points behind him, we have Hunter Lawrence rounding out the top 5, and I don't really have anything good or bad to say about him. He's had a very solid start this season. He went 5-4 for 5th overall last weekend. He's right here with everybody else in the top 5, all within the same striking distance in the points. But that being said, he is at the bottom of that fight. Then we have a pretty large jump back to 6th in the points. 14 points back is Jason Anderson. We saw him go 9-6 for 8th overall last weekend. And to be honest, I was expecting at least one top 5 moto finish. We saw him absolutely tear it up in 2022, where he got his first and only overall win in motocross. And that was against Eli Tomac and Chase Sexton. So I know he has some confidence and comfortability back at Hangtown. So to me, it is a little bit concerning and indicative of where he's at that he did not get a top 5. Moto number 2 was definitely solid, but as the points are starting to indicate, it does look like there's a pretty big gap between him and all the other guys we've talked about so far. Then only 1 point behind him, we have his teammate Jorge Prado. And I think it's pretty scary how his season has gone so far as well. But then again, I do think a lot of expectations were way too high for him coming in. Personally, I feel like I was a little bit more middle of the road. Moto number 1 last weekend was pretty bad. He was 12th, but then he bounced back really well in Moto number 2 with a 5th place finish. Then again, that was with a shorter moto, and we did see him starting to drop back pretty bad at Fox Raceway. That being said, he did say in an interview that the bike is essentially too slow and he needs more horsepower to get his signature good starts. He did say that him and the team are definitely working on trying to improve the motor, so I'm curious to see exactly what that looks like. If they can get that going, it would be really cool to see him get some hole shots and get up there and just get in these battles. In 8th, only 2 points behind Jorge, we have RJ Hampshire, and he's been right around just outside that top 5 all season long. He went 6-8 last weekend, and don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure he actually fell in Moto number 2. I definitely have to put RJ down for at least a top 5 overall at some point this season. It's awesome to see him out there. His wrist is completely unstable and not okay, but he doesn't care. He's still going for it. Love to see RJ out there. Then in 9th, we have Joey Savacci. He's 7 points back from RJ right now. Like we said in the injury updates, out there with the broken finger. Almost got a top 10 last weekend. Looking really good, stacking points. Had a pretty solid Supercross season. He's going to be well up there in the seating if he can stay healthy for the rest of Motocross as we get into the playoffs. Then rounding out your top 10, we have Cooper Webb. And I try not to give away too many rider statistics until we get to that segment, but I thought it was worth mentioning that he scored twice as many points last weekend as he did at Fox Raceway. Looking a little bit deeper, he did DNF the first moto, and so essentially what happened is he's finished in 7th every single moto so far this year. I don't foresee him being a top 5 guy without a little bit of help right now, but it's awesome to see him out there continuing to race even when he doesn't have to, and if he can just keep this up, he'll probably have your number 1 seed as we enter the playoffs. In 11th, we have Benoit Petrel, and he definitely didn't have as good of a weekend at Hangtown as he did at Fox Raceway, but it was still pretty solid. He was actually one of the few people that was vocally displeased about the fact that they shortened the motos. He did go 13-14 for 13th overall on the day, so still well inside the top 15, not quite a top 10 like he had at Fox Raceway. It seems like he just needs a little bit better starts. If he ever starts inside the top 3, look for him to potentially finish in the top 5. Definitely going to be a top 10 guy in that situation. Then 5 points behind Paterell, we have Malcolm Stewart, and he was able to have a much better weekend at Hangtown last weekend. He went 8-10 for a top 10 overall finish. I don't expect to see much better results than that throughout the season unless the field starts to get depleted. But even if he just manages that, it's going to be good enough for him to probably get a pretty good ride next year and come into the playoffs nice and strong. In 13th, 6 points behind Malcolm Stewart, we have Valentin Guillot, and the exact opposite could be said about him. He struggled a lot more than he did at Fox Raceway. He was just outside of the top 10 there, and then he went 15-20 last weekend. He's also the guy who tangled with Eli Tomac out of the gate in Moto number 2, kind of ruining both of their races. That being said, not placing any blame on him, Tomac got a late jump and it was just a racing incident. Nonetheless, it's awesome to see him out there. He has a little bit of support, I believe, from Rock River Yamaha. It looks like he's going to do the full series and maybe even try to do the playoffs, so another talented rider in the field. 2 points behind him, we have Cody Schock, rounding out your top 15. And now we're back to another guy who had a much better weekend than he did at Fox Raceway. He DNF'd in Moto number 2 at Fox Raceway, and he was almost top 10 in both motos last weekend. He did get some really good starts and fade back to an 11-12 finish. It doesn't seem like he was very happy with that, but nonetheless, on paper, 11-12 in this field, very strong finishes, also pretty good points. He's going to need that to try to build that towards the SMX playoffs. Then only 1 point behind him, we have Grant Harlan, and that's even with him DNFing and going out in Moto number 2. He's obviously going to be dropping down the standings quite a bit as he's going to be out at least the next 2 rounds. Really hate to see that for him because he was starting to look really good. He definitely struggled in Supercross a bit. Looks like he was finally starting to come around. And just like we see so many times, as you're just starting to get things going, you go down and you have to start all over again. So shout out to Grant Harlan. Then we have Colton Nichols. He's 6 points behind Grant Harlan. He definitely struggled at Fox Raceway. He also struggled in Moto number 1 last weekend, but then he bounced back nicely with a 13th place moto finish in Moto number 2. What can I say? The field's deep right now. He's another guy who's good. Could definitely be top 10 if things go good. Only 3 points behind Colt, we have Derek Kelly, and he had a much better weekend last weekend. He went 16-16 for 16th overall, scoring twice as many points last weekend as he did at Fox Raceway. Then 3 points behind him, we have Lorenzo Locurcio. He had another pretty solid weekend. He actually got a top 15 overall finish at Hangtown. Then tied with him, we have Freddie Noren, and he is actually struggling a little bit more than I was expecting. We've always seen him come out and be pretty strong in motocross before. He's finished well inside the top 10 in the championship not that long ago. He went 18-17 for 17th overall last weekend. Not sure if he's starting to wind down on his career. He is getting a little bit older now. Then rounding out your top 20, we have Derek Drake, who is 2 points back behind Freddie Noren. But I'm pretty concerned what I saw here. He is trying to recover from Lyme disease. He had a pretty strong showing at Fox Raceway, finishing 14th overall, but he was well outside the top 30. Both motos last weekend did not score any points. Hopefully he's doing okay. No real updates on his condition right now, but he's definitely got the speed and the talent to be a top 15 guy. But then at the same time, he definitely did not look good last weekend, so I'm hoping to see him bounce back this weekend. Moving on to the schedule and weather, things are changing a bit this week. The races are starting essentially an hour earlier because they still start at 1 o'clock, but the time zone has shifted 1 hour earlier since we're now in Colorado. So what that means is that Race Day Live will kick off at 12 Eastern and the racing itself will start at 3 Eastern. But it's also worth noting that this is going to be broadcast live on NBC. So they're doing that funky thing where the 450 class goes first, but they're not doing that to show the 450 class first. They're actually going to broadcast 250 Moto number 1, which is the second race, as the start of the NBC broadcast, and then show 450 Moto number 2 right after, and then that's it for the NBC broadcast. So I'm not sure that I understand what they're doing there. They could have essentially accomplished the same thing. I guess they're trying to show halftime. Personally, I think people would much more enjoy just watching 250 Moto number 1, 450 Moto number 1, and then they're probably going to be likely to go out and buy Peacock to watch Moto number 2 if they enjoyed it. I don't know about you guys, but most people don't seem to care about the halftime show thing that they do. I think it's fine to fill in the space in between the motos, but anyways, moving on to the weather. There was a bit of rain that came down Thursday and Friday leading into the race, but as for the weather on race day itself, it looks really good. The high should be around 75. Total opposite of what we had to endure last weekend in Hangtown, so it shouldn't be as much of a factor like it was. Maybe the track gets a little bit deeper with that extra moisture that we saw, but it doesn't seem like it's anything too drastic. All right, now we're going to get into our rider statistics. I put this segment together for you guys who are betting or playing fantasy, but even if you're not, you might still find it interesting. Looking at Jet Lawrence, he does have some pretty good results here. Last year, he did recover from that gnarly crash that he had at Hangtown, and he got second in Moto number 1, and then came back and got first in the second Moto, winning the overall. We know he has the speed. He's only not been the fastest qualifier twice in his 450 motocross career. Also, he is the only rider this year to finish on the podium every single moto. He's also your best average starter by a noticeable margin with an average start position of 1.75 per moto. And of course, he has a really good average finish at 1.5. Comparing that to Aaron Plessinger, he's actually your 4th best average starter with an average start per moto at 5.5, but is significantly better in the average finish position with 3.25 per moto. And there's some pretty cool stats as far as Aaron goes. He has been on the podium every single moto except for the first moto of the year so far. He hasn't been off the top 5 in the last 17 motos that he's raced. And he's been super consistent in motocross. He hasn't missed any of the last 36 rounds of motocross. Also, he did get second overall here last year. As far as Eli Tomac goes, he's definitely struggling even more with his average start position. He has the 5th best average starting position, so 1 behind Aaron Plessinger, but he is 2.25 positions worse than Aaron Plessinger, so quite a bit worse. 7.75 is his average. Obviously, that's been knocked down quite a bit with his start in Moto number 2 last weekend, but at the same time, we've only seen Eli get 1 good start so far this year. Eli's actually tied with Hunter Lawrence and Justin Cooper for 3rd with an average finishing position of 4th, but obviously with that moto win, he does have a little bit more points. The last time that we saw Eli here at Thunder Valley was in 2022, where he went 1-3 for 2nd overall, ultimately losing to Ken Roxon, but still beating out Chase Sexton. So interesting, not a bad day, not a good day. I would say he's definitely up against a bigger challenge this weekend. That being said, it looks like he might be up for it. As far as Justin Cooper, he's always been a pretty good starter. He's tied for second right now with Hunter Lawrence with an average start position of 3.75. We saw him take off in Moto number 2 and try to run away. Obviously, Jet got around him. But other than that, he did really good. He locked in and got second, similar to what he did at Paula Moto number 1. What we know with Justin Cooper is that when he can get a start, he can finish up there. And I think that's worth noting because last year he grabbed both hole shots and led quite a bit of laps. Between the two motos, he led a total of 23 laps, but he ultimately did end up fading to third in both motos, finishing third overall on the day. That was his first and only time racing there on a 450, but if you want to include his 250 results, he has been on the podium 5 out of those 6 attempts and won it twice. So this is a track that he really likes. Look for him to be good, and don't be surprised at the end of the day if he's on the overall podium. As far as Hunter Lawrence, like I said, he's tied with Justin Cooper as far as average start position of 3.75, and they're also tied with an average finish of 4 per moto. He's also been pretty successful here. We saw him swap wins with his brother here last year. He won the first moto, Jet won the second moto. That shoulder injury does seem to have taken away just a little bit of his top end speed that he might have had coming into motocross last year, but at the same time, he's very fast and rock solid. This could be a turning point in a season where we see him get a little bit better, or we could see a little bit more of the same. That being said, more of the same might not be bad. He's already been on the podium once. He's not been outside of the top 5, so expect something similar or better. Realistically, I think that's probably going to be your top 5, and I think there's only a handful of guys who could break into that top 5. You'd have to look at guys like Jorge Prado, who did get 5th in Moto number 2 last weekend. He seems to be getting better. Then again, he said he's asking for more power, and we're going to a place where he's going to have less power. Jason Anderson also got a top 5 in the second moto at Paula, and he looked really good in that particular moto, but other than that, he hasn't been too close to the top 5. RJ Hampshire has been 6th in both of the first motos so far this year, so he's definitely right there. He looked a lot better in Moto number 2 last weekend. Even after a crash, he came all the way back up to 8th. That being said, his wrist is not okay. He's missing a bone. Hard to imagine that he's going to make a leap into the top 5 without a little bit of help. Cooper Webb has finished in 7th every single moto that he's finished, so he's definitely not that far off, but he's also got a little bit of a gap just to get there. And then Malcolm Stewart and Joey Savacci's best moto finishes of the year is an 8th, so they definitely have a ways to go. They're right there on the edge of the top 10 right now. All of that being said, the wild card this week in Rocky Mountain is 7th place, so there's a few guys that we just talked about that could definitely fit into that conversation. Cooper Webb, like I said, has finished in 7th every single moto that he's finished, but last week he did get 6th overall because RJ Hampshire got 6th and then 8th, so the tiebreaker went to Webb. There's a good chance that Webb could finish in a similar fashion, and somebody like Anderson or RJ Hampshire leapfrogs ahead of him and bumps Webb back to 7th, or we could just see RJ finish in 7th again like he did last week. Anderson got 7th overall at round number 1, and then he turned around and got 8th last weekend. He's gotten 9th in both of the first motos, 5th in Moto number 2 at Paula, 6th in Moto number 2 at Hangtown. So that 5th and 6th was the difference between finishing 7th or 8th overall. He's another guy finishing right around there. Keep in mind, last weekend, Jorge Prado was barely inside the top 10 because he finished 12th in Moto number 1, but then he did come back for a 5th in Moto number 2, like I said. So if he can continue that, maybe he leapfrogs all these guys. And like I said, maybe Cooper Webb would be a good pick. Or maybe he lands somewhere in between and he gets 7th. We saw him get 6th overall at round number 1, and then he got 9th last weekend. So he's definitely in that zone as well. There is a fair bit of parity with all these riders right here. They're pretty interchangeable, so it's a bit of a roll of the dice at this point. That's the best information that I can give you on these riders. Personally, I really like it like this. It makes it a little bit harder to pick these guys, and it makes the racing more interesting to watch. Sure, the top end of the field seems pretty decided. Jet Lawrence, Hayden Deegan out in front, but the rest of this top 5 battle, and especially the whole top 10, there's a lot of good battles going on, especially if you're watching the race in person. A lot of times it's more fun to watch these guys battle for 6th place than it is to watch the leaders. And all I'm trying to say is that I can really appreciate these guys and the effort that they give and the battles that they bring to the table. Personally, I'm really excited to see what happens today. I'm hoping for a bit of a shakeup at the top. I don't want anyone to get injured or anything, but at least some back and forth would be really cool to see. I'm excited to see Ty Masterpool and what he might be able to do. I'm hoping Joe Shimoda could pull a whole shot in one of these motos. And of course, I would think it would be great to see Eli Tomac get 2 really good starts and mix it up with Jet. It was great to see Eli beat Jet last weekend, but we haven't really seen them go toe-to-toe in the sense of battling back and forth. We saw Blake Baggett and Eli Tomac have a pretty good battle here years ago. I would love to see something like that. With all that being said, if you guys made it this far in the video, I really appreciate you sticking around. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite part of these videos is. I'm trying to make these as good as I can for your enjoyment. Feel free to ask me any other questions that you might have, things that you would like to see in the future. At the end of the day, I'm just a passionate fan like you guys, trying to make content for the fans. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.